Hello, and welcome to another edition of IIABCal Voices. I'm your host, James Lott Jr., and I worked in the insurance industry for like 11 years, and I met many amazing people who are doing amazing things in the industry. Now I'm out of it, but I'm kind of back in, this time interviewing folks who are doing incredible stuff to make our industry strong and diverse in the insurance industry, which is very important. And so my guest, let me read some of her credits. She is the assistant vice president of the excess work comp team at Arch. Love that. She was an underwriter at AIG. I know AIG. I know them. She has a bachelor's degree in finance and economics and a minor in women's studies from Cal State Fullerton and an MBA in finance, usually at Redlands. She has an associated underwriting designation, and she is working on her CPCU, which I know what that is too. She describes her three core values as faith, service, and excellence. I like all three of those, and I'm sure she's all three. Dymphna Menendez, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. Okay. So I want to start off with you have this thing where you have these three core values you mentioned in your bio, and I've seen it. So can you kind of expand on these three core values of faith, service, and excellence? What it means to you.
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot of things. Like I think on a personal level, and then and how I exemplify that on a professional level. But when I think about like faith, I think about like always having hope and always kind of persevering through things. And I feel like faith has a lot of disciplines that are good for just the professional life, about having humility, about being kind to others and just doing the right thing. I think especially when you're an underwriter, as much as it might not sound like it this is how it is, but when you're an underwriter, your key goal is to protect your carrier's capital, right? And one of the things that you have to be able to do is to do the right thing. And sometimes that's not always the easiest thing to do. I think especially in the marketplace that a lot of people are in with the way things are going, it can be difficult to do that, but you still have to always do the right thing for yourself and for your employer, and make sure you have that kind of credibility. So that's kind of where I see faith in professional aspect and a personal aspect. Service for me, like it's kind of like almost everything I do. I'm a very like a caregiver type person. Like right before we started this call, I told you about my sister
Yeah.
who has disabilities who I care for. I'm a foster parent. So I have two foster kids right now, and stuff. So, service to me means a lot. In a professional sense, service is also just about being there for people, and that's how you build relationships. When you think about broker relationships, a lot of people like to be a little bit more to the business and just kind of stick to that. But at the end of the day, it's still another person on the end of the phone or across the table. So, having service of mind of not just wanting to provide your service that you have as in terms of your underwriting services, but also service is just another human being to be there sometimes. Because, everyone has their battles in life, and being there for others is important. And I think that that'll go a long way in anyone's career when you do that. And then excellence, the last one is really just wanting to be the best that you can be. It's not about perfection. It's not about, getting everything right. It's really just about being your whole self, being able to bring that forward and do it to the best of your ability. Don't hold anything back. And make yourself better whenever you can. I mean, education's is a core value for me as well. Like, like from my bio, I keep going to school. I don't seem
Girl,
to
I
stop.
understand. I understand, girl. I have a lot of letters after my name too, girl. I tell you the truth.
And that helps you just get better, right? And that's kind of where excellence comes in for me. And then for the insurance industry, we're very lucky that a lot of employers support that, whether it be through through the different credits to the institutes like CPCU, or even just going back to grad school and getting an MBA or a master's and something that you're really passionate about.
Yeah, it's true. I will say that. And I was I got a couple designations while I was in the industry, and that's something that they do really support. A lot of industries don't always support that. A lot of industries are like, no, you work for us, just work for us. But this industry really does support you getting better and better in the industry. Like it's
Yeah.
the real supportive thing. So it's like they encourage you to get more and more letters after your name, so to speak, as we say,
Yeah.
and get the knowledge because it makes for a better employee, number one, but also it
Yeah.
makes for better service, going back to your thing, to people.
Yes.
It all the
It
circle.
all comes full circle. Yeah.
For circle, no, it does. And I could tell, yes, because you also, I mean, you have these different things going on with you. I was like to ask, why insurance? You should ask that first. Like, why insurance?
I think I'll probably give the answer that most people do, that they weren't expecting to do it.
Exactly.
You
Yes.
know, but I was lucky enough that at Cal State Fullerton, they were developing the Center for Insurance Studies. So there was a lot of promotion right around my junior year. So I didn't, now you can major in it at Cal State Fullerton, but when I was there, they still hadn't like officially put it as a major. It was still just like you can take like a few insurance classes. Like they had only maybe a couple like property and casualty, like, oh, you can learn a little bit about property insurance or something as like elective courses.
Yeah.
I just kind of crossed paths with the right people. I met some of the people who are involved with the center, and some of the professors and just some of the other students. And, when I compare them to the other people in the other groups, like the accounting society or things
Yeah.
like that, it was just a different vibe. Like, and I think it was a lot more collaborative, I would say, than, more competitive. And not that competition's not bad, but I think it was just more collaborative. Like I think the insurance industry was just very hungry. It still is very hungry for talent, and they're willing to invest and cultivate in that. And I was lucky enough to just cross paths with the right people. So right around my junior year, about halfway through my junior year in college, I started to get like super into it, to the point where I was like the student president for Gamma Iota Sigma, which is the student organization for
Yes.
insurance professionals. So, I really kind of went like all in after I kind of met a few people. I got to go to one conference. It was the first conference that I went to. And I got to sit next to this guy who at the time was a broker for Wells Fargo, who now is USI. But I met him and he was a broker, and I thought, wow, like this guy is so cool. Like he's such a nice person, and he's so open and willing to talk and share his knowledge. And he was based out of the Midwest, but he had contacts in the West Coast. So he introduced me to people and just had just wanted to show me what this industry was. And I think that was probably like the biggest like sign that, this is probably a good place to be. And then I just became super passionate about it. So it really is my passion now, and I put in hard work, and I love what I do. So
It's funny. I mean, like I said, I was in the business for 11 years, and there are a lot of nice people in the business. And it's one of those things. It's kind of funny because I'm in several different industries, and some of them are very competitive, and they don't want to help you. It's very much me, close to the vest. Whatever I know, I don't share.
yeah,
In insurance, and people in insurance really are like, let me help you out. Let me get you to the right person. I mean, there's competitive. I mean, there's competition clearly, but I
yeah,
found that there's also a willingness, like I said, to collaborate or to assist or to point you in a direction. It's
yeah.
not just kind of like this. You're over there and I'm over here. I mean, I find insurance it's a really welcoming village of people. I think I kind of like that. Now,
Hmm.
speaking to that, um, obviously, I'm looking at me, looking at you. Diversity and inclusion.
Yes.
Let's talk about that for a second. I mean,
Yeah.
when I was in the industry, I was one of maybe two black folks that was running around in the country. I think maybe a few others, maybe two or three. And I'm just kind of. It says in your bio that you actually have worked with more seasoned members in groups. I'll say seasoned. I don't want us old folks. I'm old, but that you worked with them to work on diversity and inclusion. And so how was that? What was that like?
Yeah, so when I started, this is funny, but when I started at AIG, they were just starting like an initiative for diversity and inclusion, which is like these employee resource groups, which is now is a lot more popular.
Yeah.
But like 6, 7 years ago, they were just kind of coming out with that. And I remember going to, because I started off in the LA office, and one of the first emails that I sent was to a friend of mine who I knew before I got there. And I tell her, hey, is AIG down with the brown? Because why isn't there a Latino group? Like, I was like the first email I sent out of like my
I
AIG
love it. I
email.
love it.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, and that's kind of how it started. I was like was pretty adamant about wanting to make sure that there was representation regardless of the size. Some small. I think it's harder sometimes when you have companies are a lot smaller and you have a smaller group and stuff like that. But I think that diversity matters whether you're someone within that community or someone who can be an ally.
Yes.
Um, so, that was important to me. So what I did, I actually started the first group that I started at AIG was the Latino Resource Group. And I was the president and founder of that. And I handed that off to a friend of mine. And then I went and started the LGBT group at AIG, and that was for the West Coast. So there was 12 offices in the West, and I tried to start as many as I could in the West. I ended up having one in San Francisco, one in Los Angeles, Woodland Hills. So I actually started quite a few. And then after that, I kind of handed that off, and then just started like participating in other groups that kind of took off from there. And I like to think that that kind of gave people, like an incentive or just like a spark to also start their own groups. Because soon after those two groups, the Asian, I think it was like Asian Leadership Network came out of that. The Women's and Allies Network came out of that. So a lot of them started to really kind of come out of a lot of what we did and setting the groundwork and setting kind of the tone of what those groups meant and what it wanted to be. Because I remember like going around and asking people, like, you want to come to our meeting? And they're like, well, I'm not Hispanic. I was like, well, it doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to be Hispanic to come to the meeting. Like, you can be an ally. So there was a lot of education around that. And I think that after, about 5 years, it got to a really great level to where they had like over 100 members and stuff like that. So it was great to do that. And that's kind of how it started at AIG. And I still kind of do that now with Gamma. I'm part of the leadership board for the Alumni Council, which is a national board. And so, really kind of pushing for that and still kind of making sure that diversity and inclusion is there. And I think right now it's such a buzzword, but I was talking to a mentor of mine, and he's like, everyone's ready to do the diversity part. He's like, it's the inclusion part that it's hard. And the way he kind of put it was that, diversity is being invited to the dance. So you got an invitation to go to the dance. He's like, inclusion is actually being asked to dance, so I think that he put it pretty well, and that's kind of one of the things that that I'm trying to make sure that happens too.
Yeah, for me, it's funny because we're in California, so and many of us in Los Angeles, but even in Central Valley too, very Hispanic, very Latinx. All those terms are being used, but it is. I mean, so it's like, it's kind of like, well, yeah, where are they? I mean, is there a place for people to come and feel kind of safe, supported, lifted? And I think these groups are great, and I'm glad you included the words of ally. I mean, I think true change can happen in many ways unless the allies of these groups say, yes, let's do this. Like, let's accept this and let's include this. I think that's a very important thing. And so what you've done, amazing. That's amazing. Did you find were there any challenges though when you were setting this up? Was there any kind of backlash, or you hanging walls, or was it pretty good?
Anything that's probably an ethnic group is probably the easiest to go with, because I think it's the easiest to try to implement, because for anyone who's not supportive, it's the hardest to try to be vocal about. But the LGBT one was probably the most challenging one for sure. There was a lot that happened in trying to get that group started. Some offices were fine. I mean, like I said, I was trying to do it within 12 offices within the Western region, which was basically Denver West. So everything encompassing that.
Okay.
So there's a very broad demographic dynamic there. And even with LA, you have LA, but then you have like the Valley, which is a lot more conservative. So there were definitely challenges that I think that it can surprise you, but at the same time, you're like, like there's still people like that, you know what I mean? And I think that it was just one of those that's very touchy still. I think it's still politicized to a point where it becomes like your own belief system. And stuff like that. So that was probably the most challenging. I think it still continues to be a very challenging group to try to get support behind, just because, it not just becomes a political thing, it becomes a religious thing, it becomes like so many other things, right? And so It's the hardest one for sure, and I had my challenges, but luckily, like, I would say that I was lucky enough that I was very vocal. And one of the things that I like tried to do a lot when when I started in my career was talk to like as many senior people as possible. So I actually made good connections with some senior folks, and I kind of basically like knocked on some doors to be like, hey, you got to bring down the hammer. Like, you can't have this happen. And that's exactly what they did. So, I was very fortunate that that had happened and that they supported me in that and that they were more than willing to just, make a flight from New York to Los Angeles for literally one meeting so that they can, kind of lay the ground rules and make sure that there was full support for the group and making sure that people didn't feel like this wasn't a group to support. And after that, we had like a ton of people like sign up for membership. So it was like, one
Yeah.
of those things, but that was the importance of allyship. In that particular example, it was just, having that senior executive who was a C-suite executive fly out for a meeting for the LGBT group to show support and also to and even when they came out, like the first thing that they said in the meeting is like, I'm here specifically because there's some challenges with this office. And I want to make it very clear that there shouldn't be any challenges whatsoever in this office. Like, and so they were very candid and very blunt. And I would surprise me because I wasn't too sure like what exactly they were going to say. Um, but uh, but yeah, they were amazing. And I always think about that kind of allyship and that example. And it doesn't always have to be something like that. It doesn't always have to be a senior executive. Allyship can come from your coworkers, people who work for you, anyone. Um, but yeah, it was challenging, but we got through it luckily.
I think, but I will give you a point to people who are thinking about when it starts from someone from the top. That does make a difference too. I mean, it does. I mean, you're right. Anybody can do it in the office, but I'm just thinking when someone comes from the top, that's even better. It's like that. I mean, it just shows leadership and it shows that there's support. And I think, and I also can only imagine, I've always been out in my business, so I don't really hide that or anything. But I know for some folks, there's a question of, am I out at work? Am I not out at work? Where do I
Yeah,
live? Where's the office? I'm sure San Francisco. Sure, I used to live in San Francisco. I know San Francisco. It was very, very gay there. So San Francisco, LA, but certain places I'm sure that are very much more open. People are more open about it. And you're also right about the whole sections of LA aspect because we have the Valley, we have Orange County, we have eastern part of Los Angeles, which is very different
yeah,
than the west side of LA. And I live in South
yeah,
Central. I live in Inglewood. Very different down here than it is over in Pomona or Montebello or Monterey
yep,
Park. It's all, and you know this because you live down here too. So
yeah,
it's very different. So I'm sure all that kind of came up and like who wants to, you're right, the ethnic part is easier to do. Well, yes, I'm Latino, I'm black, I'm Asian. But to say I'm
yeah,
LGBTQIA or whatever, that's a much more, as you said, dramatic. It shouldn't have to be, but it becomes just much more dramatic
yeah, it
conversation.
absolutely does. Yeah.
It
Yeah.
does. It does. And that's just I just and I keep hoping as we get further, it's 2020, keep getting going, it's gonna get a little. I mean, it's just tough. But again, I always feel like some people ask, well, I'm gonna ask you this question.
Mhm.
Why have these groups? Some people might say, well, why are you separating yourselves? Or like, what do you answer? What do you answer to
I
that?
think that when you look at the groups, it's about it's about employee culture more than anything. So I was listening to a former founder of Arch. His name is Dinos. I can't say his last name.
Okay.
But
Somebody important deal.
but
Hold it up. Someone look
yeah,
for it. Yeah.
yeah. He one of the things he had said about, and he was a senior executive throughout his career. He worked with Greenberg and all those big guys.
Oh yeah.
Um, and he says that collaboration and culture is probably the most important thing in the world. He goes because you can get capital whenever you need it in the finance world. He's like, but the one thing that you can't get is talent and happy people, because those are the ones that'll make good business. So when I think about being able to be yourself and being able to express your cultural background, and have a platform within your work to do that, I think is extremely important because, you know, work is 8 to 5 or 9 to 4, whatever you want, right?
So it's like
but but when you add in your commute time to work and all that stuff, I mean, we're not doing that now, but when you think about the hours you put into work, like your family's a part-time job, your family's a part-time job, because you don't, like, if you do the math, all the hours you spend is in your work inside an office with other people, right? And so to just be someone else there, and not to be able to be yourself and be able to celebrate certain things that are important to you culturally or important to you from just, your life, and to have that platform, I think it you know, really kind of just changes the way you work and the passion that you have for your work. So I think it's important, and I think it's also important because from an educational perspective, it also, spreads a lot of diversity to other people who wouldn't be exposed to your culture, who wouldn't be exposed to, different things of your life, otherwise, and people are like, oh, just keep it business or keep it this. It's like, you say that now, but then when discrimination happens and stuff like that, like what happens to keeping it business? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and stuff
Thank
like
you.
that. So, I think that it's more important now than ever because so many people's lives has been politicized, and stuff like that. And so, I think it's easy for a lot of people to be able to say those things because their life isn't you're not a walking political sign. You know what I mean? When people
That's
like,
true.
when people see me, like it's a walking political sign. When they see you, they just like assume certain things about you, or they make it like stereotypes about you and stuff like that because there's like visual cues for them, and they're just like, and they think those things, and it's like, okay, well, no, that's not how it is, right, and stuff. And so I think that it's important to have that platform for yourself, for the community of people that you work with, so they can have a happier work life too.
I agree. Okay, this person, he's Greek. I can tell that already. Do you know Lordino? I think is his name is pronounced. Chairman and
Mhm.
Arch. He's at Verisk now, director of Verisk. So yes, he's
Yeah.
somebody important. You can follow him, folks. I will
Mhm.
say this personally from me. In the 11 years I was with the association, I've had long blonde hair. I've had short fro. I mean, I my look was very on purpose, very
Yeah.
purposeful. Many times I was going to be me. I was
Mhm.
going to be me, and I changed my hair and I changed my no goatee, some goatee. I mean, I changed my looks, and I know a few people were kind of weird and sure, like what's going on there and who's
Mhm.
that and what's going on. But I was very
Yeah.
much going to show, like you said, you're showing people another part of life that they may not even know about,
Yeah.
see, come in contact with. It's all good. To me, it's good stuff. We have to be, we're all in this together, right? I mean, and again, it's a people industry. I say it all the time in the show. So, I
Yeah.
mean, like you said, we bring up when there's discrimination happening, it suddenly isn't business anymore. It's completely personal. When other things
Yeah.
happen, when someone passes away or someone, it's personal. We feel
Yeah.
it. We feel all that stuff. And when someone's
Yeah.
trying to go through the strange time of pandemics and how to keep in business, it's business, but it's also personal. How do you continue your business? How do you put food on the table? How do you pay your employees? How do you keep your employees safe? It's all personal. I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, the
Yeah.
old days are over when it was just like just
Yeah.
simply this. I think I think
Yeah.
you're a person who's bringing down those barriers, and I
Mhm.
love that. I think it's an admirable thing. I could talk to you forever. I just could. I could. Um,
Yeah.
but Dymphna, you're great. You're one of you doing great stuff. Last question to you, I guess I just want to ask is, what would you say to young queer or young Latinx people who want to get into the business? What's one thing you would say to them?
Um, I'd say that once you decide that this is an industry you want to get into, always do things based on who you are and why you matter. Um, there's still a lot of challenges in this industry, but I think that'll make you a better person just in general. Um, and I would say that there's so much opportunity. Always keep your doors open. Like, always make sure that you're open for opportunity. Don't get siloed too much. Like, there's so much you can do. And I think that's like the biggest thing about this industry is that you can do so much. And there's so many different things that you can move to and have experiences in, and just be a master of your craft, but also be open to what you can do in this industry and how you can make your mark. So as you go and talk to people, make connections, build relationships, and the rest will take care of itself.
Miss Menendez, I like that. Thank you. Tell folks where if they want to find you business wise or where you're on LinkedIn or whatever, tell me where they can find you.
Yeah. So I do have a LinkedIn. Like, always feel free to send me a message or add me on there. And yeah, and look forward to that. And then also through Gamma Iota Sigma, through the Alumni Council leadership team, we try to build alumni groups throughout the U.S. And so hopefully, if you're a Gamma alumni, you join one.
Join it.
But yeah, find me wherever you can.
I think we're far each on LinkedIn. I'm not sure. I'll make sure we are for sure. I'm not. I think we
Yeah.
are. And anything I can do to help anything, I'm here.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, follow IIABCal Voices on all the streaming service platforms out there, from iHeartRadio to Spotify to Apple, Google. We are everywhere. IIABCal Voices. And on my online network, I have over 35 shows ranging from soap operas to Star Wars. And this little show here called IIABCal Voices. Go to YouTube to JLJ Media, and that's where you can find me on all the service platforms out there, all the social media platforms. It is there. IABCal.org is their organization platform there. Everyone, please be safe, be kind, be inclusive, have compassion, and we'll see you next time.